So we are out of ice cream cones.
Yeah, it's true. We're out of ice cream cones. All right, kids. This is the last chapter in the book. Because this finding holds a trilogy. So there's 2 more books in this. So here we go. Harper, your song has a sorrowful sound, though the tune was written as gay. Your voice is sad and your hands are slow, and your eye meeting mine turns away. When it became obvious to Manoli that Tegelen had forgotten his promise to return, she slowly climbed down from the tiers and made her way out of the deserted hatching ground over the hot sand. Beauty met her at the entrance, demanding caresses and reassurance. She was swiftly followed by the others, all chittering nervously and with many anxious dartings to the entrance to see if Ramoth was about. Although Manoli had not had far to walk on the sands, the heat had quickly penetrated the soles of her slippers. Her discomfort was acute by the time she stepped onto the cooler earth of the bowl. She edged to one side of the entrance and sank down, her fire lizards grouping themselves about her while she waited for the pain to subside. As everyone was on the kitchen cavern side of the bowl, no one noticed her, for which she was grateful, since she felt useless and foolish. It would be a long walk across the bowl to the kitchens. Well, she'd just take it in small sections. She heard the faint cries of the herd beasts at the farthest end of the bowl valley and saw Ramoth hovering for a kill. The weir woman had said that Ramoth hadn't eaten for the past 10 days, which was partly the cause of her irascible temper. By the lakeside, hatchlings were being fed and bathed, and their riders shown how to oil the fragile skin. Their white tunics stood out among the gleaming green, blue, brown, and bronze hides. The little queen was slightly removed from the others, with 2 of the bronze dragons in attendance. She couldn't see where the white was. On the weir ledges dotting the bowl's face, some dragons were curled in what remained of the afternoon sun. Above and to the left of her, Manoli saw great bronze Menmouth on the ledge of the queen's weir. He was seated on his haunches, watching his mate choose her meal. Manoli saw him move slightly, glancing over his left shoulder. Then Manoli caught a glimpse of a man's head as he descended the stairs from the queen's weir. Felina's voice, raised above the conversational babble, brought Manoli's gaze back to the kitchen cavern where tables were being erected for the evening's feasting. The dragon riders were doing it, for the bright colors of their best tunics were conspicuous, moving about while the soberer colors of Holder and Craft seemed to stay in stationary clumps at a polite distance from the workers. The man had reached the bowl floor now from the queen's weir, and Manoli idly watched him start across. Auntie 1 and 2 came sweeping down to her, chittering about something that had excited them, and ducking their heads at her for reassurance. They needed to be oiled, and she felt guilty for not taking better care of them. "Do you have 2 greens?" asked an amused voice, and the tall man was standing in front of her, his eyes friendly and interested. "Yes, they're mine," she said, and held up 2 for him to inspect, responding to the kindness and good humor in his long face. "They like their eye ridges scratched, gently like this," she added, showing him. He dropped to one knee in the sand and obligingly caressed 2, who crooned and closed her eyelids in appreciation. Auntie 1 whistled at Manoli for attention, digging a jealous claw into her hand. "Stop that, you naughty creature!" Beauty roused, and Rocky and Diver reacted as well, all 3 scolding Auntie 1 so fiercely that she took flight. "Don't tell me the queen and the 2 browns are yours as well?" the man asked, startled. "I'm afraid so." "Then you must be Manoli," he said, rising to his feet and making such an elaborate bow that she blushed. "Lessa has just told me that I may have 2 eggs of that clutch you discovered. I'm rather partial to browns, you know, though I wouldn't actually object to a bronze. Of course, the greens, like this lady here," and he smiled such a winning smile to the watching 2 that she crooned responsively, "are such delicate darlings. That doesn't mean that I would object to a blue, however. Don't you want the queen? Ah, now that would be greedy of me, wouldn't it?" He rubbed his face thoughtfully and gave her a wry half-smile. "All things considered, though, I'd be heartily embarrassed if Sibel, my journeyman, is to have possession of the other egg, secured a queen instead. But," and he threw his long-fingered hand upward to signify his submission to chance, "are you waiting here for some purpose, or is the confusion on the other side of the bowl too much for all your friends?" "I should be there. The clutch must be turned. The eggs are in warm sand by the heart." "Oh, by the hearth." Well, you gotta pause that.
Okay.
Okay.
Ugh. But some raspberry and mint chocolate ice cream do not mix well.
All right. But Tegelen brought me into the hatching cabin and told me to wait, and seems to have forgot you. Not surprising, considering today's surprises. The man hastily cleared his throat and extended his hand to her. She accepted his aid because she couldn't have risen without it. He had taken 3 strides when he realized that she wasn't keeping up with him. Politely, he turned. Manoli tried to walk normally, a feat she managed for about 3 strides when her heel came down so painfully on a patch of pebbles that she involuntarily cried out. Beauty whirled, scolding fiercely, and Rocky and Diver added their antics, which were of no help to anyone. Here's my arm, girl. Were you too long on the hot sands? Ah, now wait. You're a long child, but there's no meat on your bones. Before Manoli could protest, he'd swung her up into his arms and was carrying her across the bowl. Tell that queen of yours I'm helping you, he asked, when Beauty disordered his silvering hair, diving at him. After sober reflection, be sure you give me green eggs. Beauty was too excited to hearken to Manoli, so she had to wave her arms about his head and face to protect him. It was not astonishing, then, that their approach to the kitchen caverns attracted attention, but people made way so politely, please stop.
Can I have a blanket?
It's over there. Bowing to them with such deference that Manoli began to wonder who the man was. His tunic was a gray cloth with just a band of blue, so he must be a harper of some sort. Probably weir-bound to Fort Weir, to judge by the yellow arm device. Manoli, did you hurt your feet? Felina appeared before them, curious at the flurry of excitement. Didn't Tegelen remember you? He's got no memory, drat the man. How good of you to rescue her, sir. Think nothing of it, Felina. I discovered she was custodian of the fire lizard eggs. However, if you happen to have a cup of wine, this is thirsty work. I can stand. Really I can, sir. Manoli protested, for something in Felina's manner told her that this man was too important to be toting sore-footed girls. Felina, I couldn't stop him. I'm only being my usual ingratiating self, the man told her, and do stop struggling. You're too heavy. Felina was laughing at his exaggeration as she led the way to Manoli's table above the egg basket. You're a terrible fellow, Master Robinson, indeed you are. But you'll have your wine while Manoli picks out the best of the clutch. Have you spotted the queen egg, Manoli? After the way Manoli's queen has been attacking me, I'd be safer with any other color, Felina. Now do get that wine for me. There's a good woman. I'm utterly parched. As he gently settled her into her chair, Manoli heard Felina's teasing remark. Terrible fellow, Master Robinson. Terrible fellow, Master Robinson. She stared at him, disbelieving. Now what's the matter, Manoli? Did my exercise bring out spots on my face? He mopped at his cheek and brow and examined his hand. Ah, thank you, Felina. You've saved my life. My tongue was quite stuck to the roof of my mouth. And here's to you, young queen, and thank you for your courtesy. He raised his cup to Beauty, who was perched on Manoli's shoulder, her tail firmly entwined as she glared at him. Well, he asked kindly of Manoli. You're the Master Harper? Yes, I'm Robinson. He sounded quite casual about it, and I think you need some wine, too. No, I couldn't. Manoli held up her hands in refusal. I get hiccups and go to sleep. She hadn't meant to say that either, but she had to explain why she was discourteous enough to refuse his cup. She was also acutely aware now of her stained overshirt, her sandy clothes and slippers, her complete disarray. This wasn't how she imagined her first meeting with the Master Harper of Pern, and she hung her head in embarrassment. I always advise eating before drinking, remarked Master Robinson in the nicest possible way. I shouldn't wonder, but that's half the problem right now, he added, and then raised his voice. This child is faint with hunger, Felina. Manoli shook her head, denying his suggestion and trying to forestall Felina, but she was already ordering one of the lads to bring Claw, a basket of breads, and a dish of sliced meats. When she was served, just as if she were one of the Weir women, she kept her head bent over her cup, bowing to cool the contents. Do you think there's enough here for a starving man? Asked Master Harper Robinson, his voice so plaintive and faint with his pretend hunger that Manoli was startled into glancing up at him. His expression was at once so wistful, appealing and kind that, despite her deep chagrin, she smiled in response to his foolishness. I'll need strength for this evening's work, and a base for my drinking, he added in a very quiet, worried voice. She had the feeling that he had let her share his responsibilities, but she wondered at the sadness and anxiety. Surely everyone in the weir was happy today. "A few slices of meat on a slab of that good bread," and Robinson made his voice quaver like a peevish old uncle. "And," his voice returned to his normal baritone range, "a cup of good Bendon wine to wash it down."
Can you please stop whacking the bowl with your spoon?
I'm trying.
To her consternation, he rose then, bread and meat in one hand, the wine mug in the other. He bowed to her with great dignity and, with a smile, was off. "But Master Harper, your fire lizard eggs." "Later, Manoli. I'll come back later for them." His tall figure, his head visible above the bustling activity, retreated across the cavern away from her. She watched until he was out of sight amid the visitors, bewildered, and all too keenly aware that there was no way in which she would be able to ask Master Harper Robinson about her songs. Twiddles they were, as Yanis and Mavi had always said, too insignificant to be presented for serious consideration to such a man as Master Harper Robinson. Beauty crooned softly and head stroked Manoli's cheek. Rocky hopped down from his wall perch to her shoulder. He nuzzled her ear, humming in a consoling tone. Miriam found her that way, and she roused from her apathy to rejoice with her friend. "Oh, I'm so very happy for..."
Put this one down and stop. It is driving me mad.
Let me just finish this ice cream.
You have 2 more bites, so you better make it count. Okay, you're done. Nope. Go put it down.
Where?
I don't care. Just put it down so you stop playing with it. "Oh, I'm so very happy for you, Miriam. You see, it did come right." If Miriam, with all her worries, had been able to keep a good face, surely Manoli, with much to be grateful for, could manage to follow her example. Elliot, let her have the blanket. "Did you see it? You were in the hatching ground? I was so terrified that I didn't dare watch," Miriam said, no trace of terror now in her radiant face. "I made Brecky eat the first food she's taken in just days. And she smiled at me, Manoli. She smiled at me, and she knew me. She's going to be perfectly all right. And Fnor ate every speck of the roast wherry I brought him." She giggled. All mischievous girl, not Miriam Felina or Miriam Minora. "I snitched the best slices of the spiced wherry breast, too. And you know he ate every bit of it. He'll probably eat himself sick at the feast as well. Then I told him to take poor Kant down to feed, because that dragon's just about transparent with hunger." Her voice dropped in awe. "Kant tried to protect Wirrance from Predith, you know? Can you imagine that? A brown protecting a queen. It's because Fnor loves Brecky so. And now it's all right. It's well and truly all right. So tell me." "Tell you? What?" Irritation flashed across Miriam's face. "Tell me exactly what happened when Brecky got on the hatching ground. I told you I didn't dare look myself." So Manoli told her, and told her again until she ran out of answers to all the detailed questions Miriam found to ask her. "Now you tell me why everyone's so upset about this Jackson impressing the little white dragon. He saved his life, you know. The dragon would have died if Jackson hadn't broken the shell and cut the sack." "Jackson impressed a dragon? I didn't know." Miriam's eyes widened with consternation. "Oh, now why would that kid do such a dreadful thing?" "Why is it dreadful?" "Because he's got to be Lord Holder of Ruatha Hold, that's why." Manoli was a bit annoyed with Miriam's impatience and said so. "Well, he can't be Lord Holder and Dragon Rider. Didn't you learn anything in that sea hold of yours? And by the way, I saw the half-circle Harper. I think his name is Elgian. Shall I tell him you're here?" "No!" "Well, no need to bite my head off." And with that, Miriam flounced off in a huff. "Manoli, will you forgive me? I completely forgot to come back for you." Tegelen was striding up to the table before Manoli had a chance to catch her breath. "Look, the master miner is supposed to have 2 eggs. He can't stay for the whole feast, so we've got to fix something for him to carry the eggs home in, and the rest of the eggs as well. No, don't get up. Here you, come be feet for Manoli, he ordered, beckoning to one of the weir boys. So Manoli spent most of the evening in the kitchen cavern, sewing furry bags to carry eggs safely between. But she could hear all the jollity outside, and with no small effort, she made herself enjoy the singing. 5 harpers, 2 drummers, and 3 pipers made music for the impression feast. She thought she recognized Elgian's strong tenor in one song, but it was unlikely he'd look for her at the back of the kitchen cavern. His voice made her briefly homesick for sea winds and the taste of salty air. Briefly, too, she longed for the solitude of her cave. Only briefly. This weir was the place for her. Her feet would heal soon. She'd no longer be old Auntie Sit by the fire. So how would she make her place in the weir? Felina had enough cooks, and how often would the weir, used to meat when it wished, want to eat fish? Even if she knew more ways of preparing it than anyone else. When she came down to it, the only thing in which she excelled was gutting fish. No, she would not think about harpering anymore. Well, there had to be something she could do. "Are you Manoli?" asked a man tentatively. She looked up to see one of the miner craftsmen who'd shared her tear at the impression. "I'm Nicket, master miner of Cromhold. Weirwoman Lessa said that I was to have 2 fire lizard eggs." Beyond his stiff manner, Manoli could see he was restraining an eager impatience to hold fire lizard eggs of his own. "Indeed I have, sir, right here," she said, smiling warmly at him and indicating the table-protected basket. "Well, my word," and his manner thawed visibly. "You're taking no chances, are you?" He helped her move the table and watched anxiously as she brushed back the top layer of sand and exposed the first of the eggs. "Could I have a queen egg?" he asked. "Master Nicket, Lessa explained to you that there's no way of telling which is which among the fire lizard eggs," said Tegelen, joining them to Manoli's intense relief. Of course, Manoli might have a way of telling. She might? Master Miner Nicket regarded her with surprise. "She's impressed 9, you know." 9? Master Nicket frowned at her now, and she could practically read his mind. 9 for a child and only 2 for the Master Miner? "Pick Master Nicket 2 of the best, Manoli. We don't want him to be disappointed." Although Tegelin's face was sober, Manoli caught the expression in his eyes. She managed to conduct herself with proper dignity, and made a play of picking out just the right eggs for Master Miner Nicket, all the while being certain in her own mind that the queen egg was going to Master Harper Robinson only. "Here you are, sir," she said, handing Master Miner Nicket the furry pouch with its precious contents. "You'd best carry them in your riding jacket against your skin on the way home." "Then what do I do?" Master Nicket asked with humility as he held the sack in both hands against his chest. Manoli looked at Tegelen, but both men were looking at her. She gulped. "Well, I'd do exactly what we're doing here. Keep them near the hearth in a strong basket with either hot sand or furs. The weir woman said they'd be hatching in about a 7-day. Feed them as soon as they break their shells, as much as they can eat, and talk to them all the time. It's important to—" She faltered. How could she tell this hard-faced man that you had to be affectionate and kind? "You must reassure them constantly. They're nervous when they're first hatched. You saw the dragons today. Touch them and stroke them." The Master Miner was nodding as he catalogued her instructions. "They must be bathed daily, and their skins must be oiled. You can always tell when a crack is developing from scaly patches on the hide, and they keep scratching themselves." Master Nicket turned questioningly to Tegelen. "Oh, Manoli knows what to do. Why, she has her fire lizard singing tunes along with her and all." Tegelen's airy assurance did not sit too well with the Master Miner. "Yes, but how do you get them to come to you?" he asked pointedly. "You make them want to come back to you," Manoli said so firmly that she rated one of the miner's daunting frowns. "Kindness and affection, Master Nicket, are the essential ingredients," Tegelen said with equal force. "Now I see that Tigran is waiting to escort you and your fire lizards back to Crom." And he led the Master Miner off. When Tegelen returned to Manoli, his eyes were dancing. "I'll wager you my new tunic that one won't keep a fire lizard. Cold Clod, that's what he is. Numbwit." "You shouldn't have said that about my fire lizard singing with me." "Why not?" Tegelen was surprised at her criticism. "Miriam hasn't done that much with her 3, and she's had them longer. I told—" "Ah, yes. Craftsmaster Flar did indeed say that you're to have a fire lizard egg." And so the evening went, with lucky egg holders and craftsmen arriving to collect the precious fire lizard eggs. By the time only Master Harper Robinson's eggs remained in the warm sands of the basket, Manoli had become resigned to hearing Tigellin's wheeze that she had taught her fair fire lizards to sing. Fortunately, no one asked her to put it to the test, since her weary friends were curled up on their wall perches. They hadn't roused from sleep for all the singing and laughter at the merry tables in the bowl. Harper Elgin was thoroughly enjoying the impression feast. He hadn't realized how dour half-circle hold was until this evening. Yanis was a good man, and a fine sea holder to judge by the respect his holders accorded him, but he certainly knew how to take the joy out of living. When Elgin had sat in the hatching ground watching the young boys impress, he had determined that he'd find a fire lizard clutch of his own. That would alleviate the gloom at half-circle, and he'd see that a Lemmy got an egg too. He'd heard from his neighbors in the tiers that the clutch being distributed this evening to the fortunate had been found down the coast from half-circle Seahold by Tigellin. Elgin had promised himself a chat with the bronze dragon rider, but Tigellin had had 2 passengers aboard Monarch when he'd collected Elgin at half-circle, so there'd been no opportunity to talk. Elgin hadn't seen the man since the hatching, but he'd bide his time. Meanwhile, O'Haran, the weird harper, had Elgin playing guitar with him to amuse the visitors. Elgin had just finished another tune with O'Haran and some of the other visiting harpers when he caught sight of Tigellin, assisting a craftsman to mount a green dragon. It was then that Elgin noticed that the visitors were thinning out and this rare evening was drawing to a close. He'd speak with Tigellin and then seek out the master harper too. "Over here, man," he said, beckoning to the bronze rider. "Oh, Elgin, a cup of wine, please. I'm parched with talking. Not that it'll do those cold clods much good. They have no feeling for fire lizards at all. I heard you found the clutch. It wasn't in that cave by the Dragonstones, was it?" "By the Dragonstones? No. Way down the coast, in fact." "Then there wasn't anything there." Elgin was so bitterly disappointed that Tigellin gave him a long look. "Depends on what you were expecting." "Why? What did you think would be in that cave if it didn't hold fire lizard eggs?" Elgin wondered briefly if he would be betraying a Lemmy's confidence, but it had become a matter of his professional honor to know if the sounds he'd heard from that cave had been made by pipes. "The day a Lemmy and I saw the cave from the boat, I could have sworn I heard pipes. A Lemmy insisted it was wind over blowholes in the cliff, but there wasn't much wind that day." "No," Tigellin said, seeing a chance to tease the harper. "You heard pipes. I saw him when I searched the place." "You found pipes? Where was the player?" "Sit down. Why are you so excited?" "Where's that player?" "Oh, here at Bend and Weir." Elgin sat down again, so deflated and disappointed that Tigellin forbore to tease him further. "Remember the day we rescued you from Thread? Tigran brought someone in as well." "The lad?" "That was no lad. That was a girl, Manoli. She's been living in the cave." "Now what's the matter?" "Manoli? Here? Safe? Where's the Master Harper? I've got to find Master Robinson. Come, Tigellin, help me find him." Elgin's excitement was contagious, and though he was mystified, Tigellin joined the search. Taller than the young harper, Tigellin spotted Master Robinson in deep conversation with Minora at a quiet table in the bowl. Sir, I've found her," Elgin cried, dashing up to them. "Have you now? The love of your life?" asked Master Robinson amiably. "No, sir. I found Paterian's apprentice." "Her? The old man's apprentice was a girl?" Elgin was gratified by the Master Harper's surprise and grabbed at his hand, quite prepared to drag the man after him to search. "She ran away from the Seahold because they wouldn't let her make music, I think. She's a Lemmy's sister." "What's this about Manoli?" asked Minora, obstructing Elgin's flight with the harper. "Manoli?" Robinson raised his hand to silence Elgin. "That lovely child with the 9 fire lizards." "What do you want of Manoli, Master Robinson?" Minora's voice was so stern that the harper was brought up sharp. He took a deep breath. "My much respected Minora, old Paterian sent me 2 songs written by his apprentice, 2 of the loveliest melodies I've heard in all my tunes of harpering. He asked were they any good." Robinson raised his eyes heavenward for patience. "I sent word back immediately, but the old man had died. Elgin found my message unopened when he got to the Seahold, and then he couldn't find the apprentice. The Seaholder gave him some falderall about a fosterling who'd returned to his own hold. What's distressing you, Minora?" "Manoli. I knew something had broken that girl's heart, but not what. She may not be able to play, Master Robinson. Miriam says there's a dreadful scar on her left hand." "She can too play," said Tigellin and Elgin together. I heard the sound of multiple pipes coming from that cave, Elgian said hurriedly. I saw her hide those pipes when we cleared out her cave, Tegelen added. And furthermore, she's taught her fire lizards to sing too. She has? Bright sparks lit the Master Harper's eyes, and he turned purposefully toward the kitchen cavern. Not so fast, Master Harper, said Minora. Go softly with that child. Yes, I saw that too when we were chatting this evening, and now I understand what was inhibiting her. So, how to proceed cautiously. The Master Harper frowned and gazed at Tegelen so long that the bronze rider wondered what he'd done wrong. How do you know she's taught her fire lizards to sing? Why, they were singing along with her and O'Haran last night. Now that's very interesting. Here's what we shall do.
I can't tell if that's a bug or a screw.
I don't care right now. Could you please sit still? You are squishing me repeatedly as you get up and down and flop next to me.
Sorry.
Can you just get yourself comfortable and then be still?
Can you help me get comfort?
I can try. What would make you comfy?
Well, I'm cold, but also my head is dirty.
How's that? Is that better? Or would it be better without my arm? Okay.
Manoli was tired now, and most of the visitors had left. Still, the Master Harper did not appear to collect his fire lizard eggs. She wouldn't leave until she'd seen him again. He'd been so kind. She hugged to herself the memory of their meeting. It was hard for her to believe that the Master Harper of Pern had carried her, Manoli of the 9 fire lizards. She propped her elbows up on the table and rested her head on her hands, feeling the rough scar against her left cheek and not even minding that at the moment. She didn't hear the music at first. It was soft, as if O'Haran was playing to himself at a nearby table. Would you sing along with me, Manoli? Asked O'Haran softly, and she looked up to see him taking a place at the table. Well, no harm in singing. It would help keep her awake until the Master Harper arrived. So she joined in. Beauty and Rocky roused at the sound of her voice, but Rocky went back to sleep after a peevish complaint. Beauty, however, dropped down to Manoli's shoulder, her sweet soprano trill blending with Manoli's voice. Do sing another verse, Manoli, said Minora, emerging from the shadows of the darkened cavern. She took the chair opposite Manoli, looking weary, but sort of peaceful and pleased. O'Haran struck the bridging chords and started the second verse. My dear, you have such a restful voice, Minora said when the last chord died away. Sing me another one and then I'm away. Manoli could scarcely refuse, and she glanced at O'Haran to see what she should sing. Sing this one along with me, the Weir Harper said, his eyes intent on Manoli's as his finger struck an opening chord. Manoli knew the song, which had such an infectious rhythm that she began to sing before she realized why it was so familiar. She was also tired and not expecting to be trapped, not by O'Haran and certainly not by Minora. That's why she didn't realize at first what O'Haran was playing. It was one of the 2 songs she'd jotted down for Paterian, the ones he'd said he'd sent to the Master Harper. She faltered. Oh, don't stop singing, Manoli, Minora said. It's such a lovely tune. Maybe she should play her own song, said someone, standing just behind Manoli in the shadow, and the Master Harper walked forward, holding out his own guitar to her. No! No! Manoli half rose, snatching her hands behind her back. Beauty gave a startled squawk and twined her tail about Manoli's neck. Won't you please play it? For me? Asked the Harper, his eyes entreating her. 2 more people emerged from the darkness. Tegelen, grinning fit to crack his face wide open, and Elgian. How did he know? From the gleam of his eyes and his smile, he was pleased and proud. Manoli was frightened and hid her face in confusion. How neatly she had been tricked. Don't be afraid now, child, said Minora quickly, catching Manoli's arm and gently pressing her back into her chair. There's nothing for you to fear now, for yourself or your rare gift of music. But I can't play. She held up her hand. Robinson took it in both of his, gently fingering the scar, examining it. You can play, Manoli, he said quietly, his kind eyes on hers as he continued to stroke her hand, much as she would have caressed her frightened beauty. Elgian heard you when you were playing the pipes in the cave. But I'm a girl, she said. Yen has told me. As to that, replied the master harper somewhat impatiently, though he smiled as he spoke, if Paterian had had sense enough to tell me that that was the problem, you might have been spared a great deal of anguish, and I certainly would have been spared a great deal of trouble searching all Pern for you. Don't you want to be a harper? Robinson ended on such a wistful, distressed note that Manoli had to reassure him. Oh, yes. Yes, I want music more than anything else in the world. On her shoulder, Beauty trilled sweetly, and Manoli caught her breath sharply in distress. Now what's the matter? Asked Robinson. I've got fire lizards. Lessa said I belong in the weir. Lessa will not tolerate 9 singing fire lizards in her weir, said the harper, in a voice that brooked no contradiction. And they do belong in my harper hall. You've a trick or two to teach me, my girl. He grinned down at her with such mischief dancing in her eyes that she smiled timorously back at him. Now, and he waggled a finger at her in mock seriousness, before you can think of